If you have ever wished you could think faster, remember more, hesitate less, or quiet the part of your mind that never stops questioning itself, you are already familiar with the system people call improvement. Because cognition is not just intelligence. It is a routine, a sequence of habits and limits you live inside every day without noticing. How long it takes you to decide, how much uncertainty you tolerate, how quickly you recover from stress, what you remember vividly, and what your mind quietly lets go. Most days, it works well enough. You wake up, you focus, you forget what you need to forget, you move on, and the mind behaves like the tool it appears to be. But systems do not fail loudly. They fail quietly, by being optimized, by being pushed past what they were designed to hold, by showing you a version of yourself that works better, and then asking you to return to who you were before. Every year, thousands of people volunteer for paid clinical studies, students trying to cover rent, workers trying to stay functional through exhaustion, people who don't have the luxury of slowing down. Most of them leave believing nothing permanent happened. That belief is part of the system. Because cognitive enhancement rarely looks like danger. It looks like productivity, like calm, like control. It looks like grades improving, decisions becoming easier, fatigue fading into the background, until the enhancement ends. And what returns is not quite what you remember. The problem is not that the mind breaks. The problem is that it adapts. It recalibrates. It redefines baseline. It remembers what it felt like to work without friction. And once it learns that state, once it experiences clarity without effort, normal begins to feel like loss. Tonight's stories are not about superintelligence or distant futures. They are about ordinary people in ordinary institutions who agreed to participate, who followed the protocol, who trusted the consent forms, and who were told they could stop at any time. They did what you would do. They took the pill. They logged the side effects. They performed better. They completed the trial. And then they were left with a mind that no longer knew where the line used to be. One learned what it felt like to think clearly and could never stop measuring himself against it. One learned how to see patterns and could no longer tell which ones belonged to the world and which ones belonged to him. Because cognitive enhancement is not always about gaining something new. Sometimes it is about losing the ability to tolerate being human at baseline. Tonight, these are two stories about that moment. Two people who discover that the most frightening side effect is not collapse or hallucination or loss of control, but permanence. Because once your mind has been shown a version of itself that works better, it never fully forgets. And whatever system made that possible does not need to stay in your body to change how you think. It only needs to redraw the line and leave you to live on the wrong side of it. Story 1. Clear Mind. I saw the flyer the way you see most things when you're broke, exhausted, and too tired to feel embarrassed about it anymore. It was taped crookedly to a bulletin board outside the engineering advising office, half covered by a lost cat poster and a neon pink ad for same-day resume help. The paper was clean, glossy, and too expensive looking to belong in that hallway. Paid research opportunity, focus and retention study, $1,800 compensation, no insurance required, 2 weeks, limited slots. At the bottom was a logo in muted navy and gray, understated and professional. Hawthorne Clinical Research Partners. The name sounded like something that had been around forever, like a place that handled quiet, responsible science. Something with receptionists who wore cardigans and clipboards, people who said participant instead of subject. A place with calming music and free granola bars in the waiting room. I memorized the number without realizing I was doing it. At that point in the semester, my life had shrunk into a set of very boring emergencies. Rent, overdraft fees, a cracked molar I kept ignoring because painkillers were cheaper than a dentist. My meal plan had run out 2 weeks early because I'd been saving money by skipping dinner, then failing, then eating the same overpriced snacks from the vending machine. Engineering didn't care if you were hungry. Westbridge University didn't care if you were drowning. I was a junior, which meant the weed-out classes were behind me, and now everything was just relentless. Thermal systems, signals and controls, lab reports that felt like writing a small book every week, group projects with people who looked at you like you were defective if you couldn't keep up, I had always been good at school. Not genius good, just stubborn good. The kind of good that comes from doing what you're told and staying up late and convincing yourself it's normal. But that semester, something shifted. I couldn't focus. I had read the same paragraph 5 times and still have no idea what it said. I'd stare at an equation and feel my brain slide off it like water off glass. My thoughts were constantly running, but none of them were useful. I was anxious all the time, and the anxiety made it harder to work, and that made the anxiety worse. It was the kind of spiral you don't notice until you're already halfway down. The flyer felt like a ladder. I called the number from the parking lot behind the engineering building, my fingers numb even though it wasn't that cold yet. A woman answered on the second ring, warm and practiced. Hawthorne Clinical Research Partners, this is Nadia. How can I help you today? Her voice made it sound simple, like I wasn't about to sell off part of my brain for rent money. I'm calling about the focus and retention study, I said, trying to sound casual. The one at Westbridge. Great, she said immediately. We're screening participants this week. Are you available tomorrow afternoon? That fast. No suspicion. No hesitation. My stomach tightened with relief, and something else. A quiet alarm I didn't know how to interpret. Yeah, I said. Tomorrow works. Perfect. I'll schedule you for a pre-screen at 2. Bring a photo ID, and please don't consume caffeine for 4 hours before your appointment. We'll take vitals and do a brief cognitive baseline assessment. Baseline. The word sounded like a line drawn under who I was before. When I hung up, I stared at my phone for a second longer than I needed to. The screen reflected my face in a vague, dark way, hollow-eyed, jaw clenched. A kid pretending to be an adult. My name is Ethan Mercer. I grew up 2 hours south of Cedar Falls, in a town where everyone knew everyone else's business, and the biggest ambition most people had was to leave. My mom worked nights at a nursing home. My dad wasn't in the picture. I'd been told my whole life that if I got a degree, if I got out, if I just kept pushing, everything would get easier. It never occurred to me to question that. The next day, I walked to Hawthorne Clinical Research Partners from campus. Cedar Falls was gray with early winter, the kind of flat light that makes everything feel like it's been drained. The facility sat in a quiet office park near the river, tucked between a tax firm and a place that sold ergonomic office chairs. If you didn't know it was there, you'd never notice it. The building was low and modern, pale brick and tinted windows. A discreet sign by the entrance. No big hospital feel, no sirens or chaos. Just calm. Inside, it smelled like lemon cleaner and something faintly sweet, like vanilla. There was a small waiting room with 2 couches, a table stacked with outdated magazines, and a water dispenser that hummed softly. Nadia greeted me at the front desk. She looked like she belonged there, calm, organized, her hair pulled back neatly. She handed me a clipboard. Just a few forms, she said. Take your time. The forms were a lot. Pages of fine print about risks, side effects, confidentiality, language that made my eyes glaze over. I tried to read carefully, but the words slid around, my brain already tired from being itself. I caught phrases like transient headache, temporary insomnia, mood changes, rare episodes of dissociation, elevated blood pressure, post-trial adjustment period. Post-trial adjustment period sounded like a polite way to describe something they didn't want to put in bold. A man in a white coat brought me back to an exam room. He introduced himself as Dr. Layton, and he had the kind of face you trust automatically, soft and mildly amused, like he'd seen every nervous participant and knew exactly what to say. This is a short-term study, he explained, flipping through my paperwork. We're examining a compound intended to support attentional control and memory encoding. Nothing experimental in the sci-fi sense, I promise. I laughed a little too hard at that, like I needed him to know I was normal. We'll call it HCP-17 during the study, he continued. You'll take 1 capsule in the morning, once a day, for 14 days. We'll monitor you closely. You'll complete some cognitive tasks here every other day, and keep a daily log. He slid a small box across the table. It was sealed and labeled with my participant ID. How much do you really know about this drug? I asked, because the question felt important, and because if I didn't ask it, I'd feel stupid later. Dr. Layton met my eyes without flinching. Enough to believe it's safe, he said. and enough to know it's promising. But we're honest about one thing here, Ethan. Everyone responds differently. You might feel nothing. You might feel an improvement. That's the point of studying it. He said my name like he'd already memorized it. I signed the forms. They took my blood pressure, drew blood, ran me through a baseline cognitive test on a tablet. Memory recall, pattern matching, reaction time. It was embarrassing how slow I felt, like my brain was wading through syrup. When I left, Nadia handed me a schedule and smiled. "Welcome to Hawthorne," she said. "We'll see you tomorrow morning for your first dose, okay?" I nodded, clutching the box in my backpack like it was fragile. That night, I tried to sleep, but my mind kept replaying the word baseline, as if I was about to become two versions of myself, split by a line I couldn't see yet. The next morning, I sat in a small observation room while a research assistant watched me swallow the first capsule with a sip of water. It was white and smooth, nothing special, no metallic taste, no bitterness, just a pill. "Any questions?" the assistant asked. I opened my mouth, then closed it. There were 1,000 questions, and none of them would change what I'd already done. "No," I said. "I'm good." They kept me for an hour, asked how I felt, took vitals. Nothing happened, at first. Then, halfway through the hour, it was like someone adjusted a dial inside my head. It wasn't a rush. It wasn't euphoria. It was quiet. The constant static I lived with, the anxious hum, the frantic background noise of thoughts I couldn't control, it faded. Not completely, but enough that I noticed the absence. I sat up straighter without meaning to. The assistant asked me to do a memory task on the tablet. I looked at the list of words, the sequence of shapes, and something in my brain clicked into place. When she asked me to recall the words, they came out of my mouth effortlessly, like reading from a screen. She raised her eyebrows, impressed. "Nice," she said. "That's strong performance." I walked out of Hawthorne, into the cold air, and for the first time in months, the world looked sharp, like someone had cleaned the lens. On the way back to campus, I noticed details I'd been blind to. The way frost clung to the edges of the sidewalk cracks, the pattern of tire marks in the slush, the rhythm of footsteps behind me, 3 people, staggered. A girl in a yellow jacket texting as she walked, her thumb moving in a precise cadence. It wasn't paranoia, it was just clarity. I went to my first class and listened, really listened, to the lecture. The professor's words landed in my mind and stayed there. I wrote notes without falling behind. I asked a question and didn't second guess it. At lunch, I opened my engineering textbook in the dining hall and started reading, and I didn't stop. 2 hours passed, then 3. I felt hunger, but it was distant, like a notification I could dismiss. I kept reading, kept absorbing. I didn't have to force it. My brain wanted it. Later that night, I sat at my desk in my cramped apartment, surrounded by overdue assignments, and I did them, one by one, efficient, clean, like I was solving problems inside a well-lit room instead of a burning building. When I finished, I leaned back and realized something that scared me. I wasn't tired. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't even excited. I was calm. I wrote in my daily log for Hawthorne. Day 1. Noticed improved focus within 45 minutes. Increased clarity. Reduced anxiety. Completed coursework without procrastination. No side effects. It looked clinical, like I was observing myself. But in the margin, without thinking, I wrote something else, smaller. I feel like myself, but corrected. The days that followed were the best of my life. That sounds dramatic, but it's true in a quiet way. By day 3, I was ahead in every class. By day 5, my lab partner asked if I'd been secretly studying all semester. By day 7, I had cleaned my apartment, paid my past due bills, scheduled a dentist appointment, and applied for 2 internships. It wasn't just productivity. It was emotional control. The things that used to spike my anxiety, a professor's comment, a late email, a low quiz score, they felt manageable. My brain processed them and moved on. I started sleeping less. Not because I couldn't sleep, I just didn't feel the need. 5 hours was enough, sometimes 4. I'd wake up before my alarm with my mind already awake, already ready. At Hawthorne, they measured everything. Vitals, reaction time, recall accuracy, pattern detection. Dr. Layton seemed pleased. "You're responding exceptionally well," he told me on day 8. "How do you feel about it?" I should have lied. I should have said, "Fine." I should have kept my gratitude quiet, like a superstition. Instead, I told him the truth. "I feel like I've been handicapped my whole life," I said. Like everyone else had access to something I didn't. And now I do. Dr. Layton studied me for a moment. "Be careful with that framing," he said gently. "The goal isn't to make baseline feel like a deficit. The goal is to support functioning." But his eyes flicked just for a second toward my chart. And in that second, I realized he already knew what was happening. Not the emotional part, but the structural part. The fact that I was getting used to this. The fact that my baseline was being rewritten. The first sign something was wrong came on day 10. It wasn't physical. It wasn't a headache or nausea. It was a moment in my signals and controls lecture. The professor wrote an equation on the board, and without thinking, I knew what he was going to write next. Not because I understood the concept, but because I could see the pattern of his handwriting, the way he paused before certain symbols, the way he favored certain solutions. My brain predicted the lecture. It felt powerful. Then, it felt wrong. For the rest of class, I couldn't stop predicting. The next slide, the next student question, the joke the professor always made when a circuit diagram confused people. It was like watching a movie I'd already seen, except I was trapped in it. After class, a girl named Maya caught up to me. She was in my lab section, smart and intimidating, and always one step ahead. "Hey, Ethan," she said. "Are you okay? You've been kind of intense lately." I smiled automatically. "I'm fine," I said, just focused. Maya frowned. "You don't blink," she said, half joking. I laughed, but the laugh sounded rehearsed. That night, I stood in my bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror. My pupils looked normal. My face looked normal. But my eyes looked still, like someone had turned down the human part. I told myself it was stress. I told myself it was the lack of sleep. I told myself I was overthinking because my brain finally had enough bandwidth to be dramatic. Day 14 arrived too quickly. The last dose was administered at Hawthorne under observation. Nadia smiled at me like she was proud. "You did great," she said. "You'll receive the remainder of your compensation after your post-trial assessment next week. Make sure you follow the taper instructions." I blinked. "Taper instructions?" I asked. She hesitated, just a fraction. "Dr. Layton will go over it," she said. But Dr. Layton wasn't there that day. Instead, a different doctor, Dr. Ramos, handed me a sheet of paper with bland bullet points. Post-trial guidance: hydrate. Maintain regular sleep schedule. Avoid caffeine for 72 hours. Monitor mood. Report severe symptoms immediately. No taper. No gradual decrease. Just stop. I stared at the paper. "I thought there would be a taper," I said. My voice sounded sharper than I intended. Dr. Ramos smiled, polite and distant. "HCP-17 does not require tapering," she said. "It's out of your system quickly." "Out of my system," I repeated, because the phrase didn't match what it felt like in my head. "It's important to remember," she continued. "Your baseline is still your baseline. The compound supports certain pathways temporarily. Your cognition will normalize." Normalize. I walked out of Hawthorne holding the paper like it was a bad grade. That night, I didn't sleep at all. Not because I couldn't, physically. I lay down, closed my eyes, and my mind stayed awake, alert, running quietly, but relentlessly. I realized that while on the drug, my thoughts had been calm because they had been organized, efficient, directed. Without it, they weren't calm. They were fast and hungry. The next day, the clarity was still there, but it was thinner, like a fading signal. My focus slipped at the edges. I'd start a task and feel my mind drift, then snap back with irritation. By day 2 off the drug, I felt heavy, like gravity had increased. I tried to study and couldn't. The textbook page looked like it was written in another language. My brain, used to effortless understanding, panicked. Anxiety came back, but it wasn't the old anxiety. The old anxiety was fear of failure. This was something else. This was terror of limitation. I remembered what it felt like to be sharp, to be calm, to be capable, and I couldn't access it. It was like having a memory of sunlight while trapped underground. I called Hawthorne and left a message. "Hi, this is Ethan Mercer," I said, voice tight. "Participant ID 17043. I'm experiencing some cognitive decline. It's hard to focus. It's worse than before. I just wanted to check if that's normal." No one called back. Day 4 off the drug, I missed a quiz in thermal systems because I forgot it existed. Not because I didn't care, but because my brain simply dropped it, as if it had been erased. I sat in my apartment afterward, staring at the wall, and something inside me snapped. I started crying, suddenly and violently, like my body had been holding it back for weeks, and finally let go. The crying felt foreign. My throat burned. My chest hurt. I couldn't stop. When I finally calmed down, I felt emptier than I'd ever felt, like I'd been hollowed out. I opened my laptop and tried to look up information about Hawthorne Clinical Research Partners. The website was clean, professional, vague. Stock photos of smiling people in lab coats, phrases like innovating wellness and advancing cognitive health. No mention of HCP-17. No mention of the study, just the contact form. I found a PDF in my email, the consent form I'd signed. I reread the side effects section, slower this time. Post-trial adjustment period. Possible reports of dysphoria, attentional dysregulation, emotional blunting, sleep disturbance. Emotional blunting. I laughed, a harsh sound in my empty apartment. I wasn't blunted. I was raw. I was bleeding out inside my own head. Then, the worst part started. My memory stayed. Not the enhanced memory, not the perfect recall, but the memory of being enhanced. I remembered what it felt like to read and understand instantly. I remembered the calm, the certainty. That memory became a constant comparison. Every moment of normal struggle was now measured against what I'd briefly been, and it made normal feel unbearable. I started making lists to compensate. Sticky notes everywhere. Alarms on my phone, reminders for things I used to do automatically. Eat, shower, submit, lab report, pay rent. The lists helped, but they also humiliated me. Like I was trying to parent myself. My grades crashed. Professors looked at me with confusion. Maya stopped sitting next to me. "You're not okay," she told me after lab one day. "It's like you're gone." "I'm here," I said, too quickly. She watched me, her eyes narrowing. "What did you do?" she asked softly. I didn't answer, because I didn't know how to explain that I had been given a glimpse of a version of myself that functioned, and then it was taken away. How do you tell someone you're grieving your own potential? 2 weeks after the trial ended, Hawthorne finally called me back. It was Nadia. "Hi, Ethan," she said brightly, as if we were still in the waiting room with lemon cleaner and vanilla air freshener. "Just checking in. How are you feeling post-study?" My hands trembled around my phone. "Bad," I said. "I feel worse than before. I can't focus. My anxiety is off the charts. I'm missing things. I'm not okay." There was a pause. Then Nadia's voice softened, but it didn't change. "I'm sorry to hear that," she said. "Post-trial adjustment can be challenging. Have you been maintaining proper sleep and hydration?" "This isn't sleep," I said. "This is my brain. I need help." Another pause. "Your participation records indicate successful completion," she said carefully. "But we do recommend seeking support through your primary care provider if you're experiencing distress." "I don't have a primary care provider," I snapped. "That's why I did the trial. I don't have insurance." Silence. Then, quietly, "I understand," Nadia said. "We'll document your report. Please attend your post-trial assessment next Tuesday at 10 a.m. She said it like a solution. I hung up and stared at the wall. Successful completion. That phrase sat in my head like a stamp. The post-trial assessment was a week later. I walked into Hawthorne feeling like I was entering a place I'd imagined, not somewhere real. The waiting room looked the same, calm and clean, but now it felt staged, like a set. Dr. Layton was back. He greeted me with professional warmth, but his eyes flicked over me in a way that felt clinical. "You look tired," he said. "I'm falling apart," I said. He nodded, as if that was data. They ran the cognitive tests again. My performance was worse than my baseline. That was the part that made my stomach drop. I wasn't just returning to normal. I was below normal. I watched the numbers on the screen, the reaction time, the recall accuracy, and felt a cold, slow dread. Dr. Layton reviewed the results with his hands folded. "Some participants experience a rebound effect," he said. "Your attentional systems were supported for 2 weeks. Now they're compensating." "Compensating," I repeated. "So you broke something." He didn't react to the word broke. "We didn't break anything," he said calmly. "We observed a response. Your baseline may take time to restabilize." "How long?" I asked. He hesitated. "That varies," he admitted. "Days, weeks, months. What if it doesn't?" I asked. He looked at me, and for the first time, the friendly mask slipped just enough for something colder to show through. "Then you adapt," he said. "Adapt. Like I was a system, not a person." I left Hawthorne with my compensation check in my pocket and a feeling in my chest that I couldn't name. It wasn't gratitude. It wasn't anger. It was something like betrayal, but deeper, because I had agreed to it. On campus, I watched other students hurry past, heads down, complaining about exams, talking about parties, living normal lives inside normal brains. I wanted to grab them and shake them. "You don't know how good you have it," I wanted to say. "You don't know what you're allowed to forget." That night, I sat at my desk and opened my engineering textbook again. I forced myself to read, line by line, even when it hurt. But every time my mind slipped, every time I forgot what I'd just read, the memory of clear mind rose up like a ghost. I remembered myself 2 weeks ago, calm and sharp, moving through life as if it was finally designed for me, and I realized the truth Hawthorne never said out loud. The drug didn't just enhance me, it showed me what it felt like to be someone I could never be again. Normal wasn't a place I could return to. Normal was now a ceiling I could see, perfectly, painfully, and never touch. I turned the page. I read the same sentence again, and somewhere in the quiet of my apartment, in the pause between my breath and the next thought, I felt the outline of that other version of me, the corrected one, watching from the other side of the line they'd drawn. Not gone, just unreachable, like a memory I could not forget. Story 2. Baseline Drift. The first time I noticed the pattern, I thought it was just fatigue. It was 2:17 a.m., and the terminal was doing what it always did in the dead hours. Breathing quietly, lights buzzing, cameras blinking red in their housings like slow, watchful eyes. On my monitors, Harlow Intermodal Terminal looked sterile and unreal, a stitched-together world of corridors, stairwells, platforms, and glass doors. In real life, it was louder, dirtier, more human. But at 3 a.m, behind tinted security glass, it became a model of itself. A place reduced to motion and rectangles. A city's bloodstream drained down to a few late-night passengers and the staff who pretended not to resent them. My name is Marcus Hale. I'm 34, divorced, and technically employed by a subcontractor that has a contract with another subcontractor that works for the Transit Authority. My job title is Night Operations Security Analyst, which sounds like something that comes with a badge and a pension. It doesn't. It comes with an access card, a rolling chair that squeaks if you lean back too far, and a bank of screens that makes your eyes feel like sandpaper by sunrise. I took the job because it paid a little better than warehouse work, and because I could do it without talking to too many people. After my marriage ended, after I realized how much of my life had been built around avoiding conflict, I found comfort in quiet, in watching instead of being watched. The terminal was my world. The cameras were my coworkers. The night shift was a kind of slow isolation that felt safer than daylight. That's what made the flyer believable. It wasn't taped to a university bulletin board like some college kid's opportunity. It was emailed to me through my supervisor with the subject line, "Overnight Worker Performance Study, Compensation Available." The email was formatted like corporate language, clean and neutral. A partner research group, Brightwell Neuroperformance was recruiting overnight workers for a fatigue reduction and threat recognition study, compensation for participation, minimal disruption, on-site assessments. At the bottom, in smaller text, participation may qualify you for additional contract incentives. In our world, that meant one thing. If you didn't volunteer, somebody would remember you didn't volunteer. I told myself I had a choice. I clicked the link. The intake questionnaire asked the usual things: sleep quality, caffeine intake, stress levels. It asked how often I felt alert, how often I felt irritable, how often I felt distracted. I answered honestly because I was tired of lying to myself. Alert, sometimes. Irritable, often. Distracted, constantly. Then there were questions that made my skin prickle. Do you experience intrusive thoughts during periods of low stimulation? Do you find yourself repeating routines unconsciously? Do you feel you notice details other people miss? I hesitated on that last one. Everyone in security tells themselves they notice details other people miss. It's how you justify staring at strangers for 8 hours a night. But the truth was, lately, I'd been missing details. Faces blurred together. Conversations drifted. I'd rewind camera footage and realize I'd been staring at the wrong screen for 10 minutes. I checked yes, anyway. Not because it was true, but because I wanted it to be. 2 days later, a woman named Elena met me outside the terminal, near the service entrance where the dumpsters sat under a single flickering light. She wore a navy jacket with Brightwell's logo on the sleeve, and carried a hard case like a paramedic. "Marcus Hale?" she asked, glancing at her tablet. "That's me." She smiled like she'd practiced it in a mirror. "Thanks for participating," she said. "We'll do a baseline assessment, then you'll start the protocol tonight." Baseline. That word again. Like a line under who you are before someone decides to improve you. Elena led me into a small conference room the transit authority used for mandatory safety trainings. It smelled like old coffee and whiteboard marker. She set up a portable blood pressure cuff, a pulse oximeter, and a small kit with labeled blister packs. "This is a 2-week protocol," she explained, voice smooth and rehearsed. "It's designed to help overnight workers maintain attentional stability and improve visual threat detection. You'll take 1 dose at the start of your shift. We'll do brief cognitive tasks every other night." "What's the drug?" I asked. Elena paused, then answered in the way people do when they're trained not to say too much. "It's classified for the study as BNP4, she said. "It's not commercially available. It has a short half-life, and it's cleared quickly. Most participants report improved alertness, reduced fatigue. And side effects? Some headache, mild nausea, sleep changes, rarely increased sensory sensitivity." Her eyes flicked up at me, just long enough to measure my reaction. "Most people tolerate it well," she added. I signed the consent forms. The same type of dense pages that always say they're not responsible for what happens to you. Then Elena handed me the first blister pack and watched me swallow the capsule with a lukewarm sip of water from the break room sink. It tasted like nothing. For 20 minutes, nothing happened. Then, like someone opened a vent in my skull, the fog lifted. It wasn't a jolt like caffeine. It wasn't the shaky alertness of an energy drink. It was clean, crisp. I looked at the monitors, and the terminal sharpened into focus like the cameras had upgraded resolution. I could see the difference immediately. The image quality hadn't changed. I had. On camera 14, a man in a hoodie paced near a stairwell, shifting weight from foot to foot. Normally, that would register as loitering. On BNP4, I saw the pattern of his movement, the way he never stepped into the light, the way his head tilted toward the security camera at predictable intervals. On camera 22, a woman sat alone on a bench. Her face was half hidden by her hair. Normally, she'd be sleeping passenger. Now, I noticed her hands were clenched in her lap, her shoulders stiff, her leg bouncing in a fast rhythm. Anxiety, fear, waiting. I zoomed in, checked timestamps, cross-referenced with other camera angles. The information stacked itself in my mind neatly. I picked up the radio, called for a patrol unit to do a casual check. Minutes later, the patrol officer reported back. "Guy in the hoodie was waiting for his ride," he said. "Woman's fine, just missed her bus." I should have felt embarrassed. Instead, I felt satisfied. Not because I'd been right, because I'd seen what I needed to see. Even when it wasn't danger, it was data. That's what BNP4 did. It made everything feel meaningful. By the third night, I was hooked. I wasn't just awake. I was better. The job stopped feeling like staring at screens and started feeling like reading a language I'd always been able to speak but never fully understood. I noticed things that used to slip past me. The janitor, who always took the same route, same timing, same pauses. The ticket booth clerk who tapped her pen exactly 5 times before answering the phone. The late-night regular who always entered through the west doors at 1:42 a.m., always bought a coffee, always stood under the same light. The terminal wasn't random, it was a machine. And for the first time, my brain could see the gears. Elena checked in every other night, running quick cognitive tests on her tablet. Pattern matching, reaction time, visual scanning tasks. "You're performing well above baseline," she said on the 6th night, almost pleased. "Feels like I'm finally doing what I'm supposed to be doing," I replied. Elena's smile tightened, just a fraction. "It's important to remember this is a temporary support," she said. Temporary. She said it like it was a comfort, but it sounded like a threat. Halfway through the study, my supervisor pulled me aside at shift change. "You've been making a lot of proactive calls," he said, tone neutral. "Transit Authority likes it." I didn't tell him it wasn't effort. It was instinct now, automatic as breathing. He handed me a new schedule. "More cameras," he said. "They want you monitoring the service corridors too." The service corridors were the part of the terminal most people never saw. Maintenance tunnels, utility access points, emergency stairwells, spaces built for pipes and wiring and workers who moved like shadows. I'd always hated monitoring them because the footage felt wrong. Too empty, too still. The kind of stillness that makes you imagine movement. On BNP4, those corridors became fascinating. The silence wasn't absence, it was structure. The first night on the new cameras, I noticed something immediately. A door in corridor C9 opened at 2:11 a.m., then closed again 20 seconds later. No one walked through. No one appeared on any adjacent camera. A glitch, I thought, except the motion sensor wasn't supposed to trigger without a heat signature. I rewound the footage, watched again. Door opens, door closes. No person. I checked the door log in the system. No entry recorded. A chill crawled up the back of my neck, but my mind didn't spiral. It analyzed. I pulled up camera feeds from other angles, checked timestamps, searched for any matching movement. Nothing. Then I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. The door opened again, exactly 8 minutes later. Same timing, same duration, like a heartbeat. I called maintenance. They said no one was scheduled in that corridor. I wrote it up, filed it as a mechanical anomaly, and told myself that was that. But once you notice a pattern, you don't unsee it. The next night, corridor C9 did it again. Door opens, door closes. Every 8 minutes, always 20 seconds. I started timing it, watching it like a metronome, waiting for it the way you wait for a drip when you're trying to sleep. On the third night, I saw it. Not a person, a shadow, low and fast, sliding across the floor just beyond the door. It moved like something being dragged, or like a person crouching too low. My heart kicked hard, and my hand moved to the radio, then stopped, because I couldn't tell if it was real. The footage was grainy. The corridor lighting was bad. Shadows stretched weirdly. But on BNP4, my brain didn't just see a shadow. It saw direction, intent. It saw a pattern. I rewound, watched frame by frame, and realized the shadow moved the same way each time, the same speed, the same arc. It wasn't random. It was routine. I called for a patrol unit, and the officer checked corridor C9. "Nothing there," he said. "Door's fine. No one around." I watched him on camera as he walked away. His flashlight beam swung across the walls, bright and useless. Behind him, as he turned the corner, the door in C9 opened. The officer didn't notice. He was already leaving. But I noticed. I watched, breath held, waiting for something to step out. Nothing did. The door closed. My skin prickled under my uniform, sweat cold against my spine. Elena came on the 10th night for another assessment. I told her about corridor C9, about the door, about the shadow. She listened, eyes unreadable. Could be a sensor issue, she said. It's not random, I replied. It's on a schedule. Elena tapped something into her tablet. Sometimes heightened perception can make patterns feel more significant, she said carefully. BNP4 increases sensitivity to environmental cues. So it's making me see things that aren't there, I said. I didn't say that, she replied. Her voice stayed calm. I'm saying your brain is collecting more data than usual. That can feel intense. I stared at her. Do other participants report this? I asked. Elena hesitated. Some report increased vigilance, she said finally. Sometimes, after the protocol ends, it fades. After the protocol ends, the end of the study was approaching, and the thought made my stomach twist. By then, BNP4 wasn't just helping me see. It was changing how I understood the world. I started noticing patterns everywhere, even off shift. On the drive home, I tracked the timing of traffic lights, the spacing of street lamps, the rhythm of headlights on the highway. At the grocery store, I noticed how often people touched their faces, how often they checked exits, how they positioned their carts like barriers. At home, I noticed my own routines. I brushed my teeth for exactly the same duration each night. I checked the locks 3 times. I set my keys on the counter in the same orientation. I didn't remember starting those habits, but now I could see them. Like my life had always been scripted, and BNP4 had handed me the script. The last dose of BNP4 was administered on a Friday night. Elena watched me swallow it, then smiled like she was closing a file. You did well, she said. Your participation is noted. You'll receive final compensation next week after your post-protocol evaluation. What happens when I stop? I asked. Elena's eyes flicked toward the monitors. You return to baseline, she said. Give it time. Baseline. That line again. Under who I was. The next night, no pill. I sat at my station and felt the difference immediately. The screens looked dull. Not lower resolution, but less meaningful. Like the world had lost texture. My eyes slid off details. My mind wandered. The old fatigue returned, thick as syrup. But the patterns didn't disappear. If anything, they became louder. Corridor C9 still opened every 8 minutes. Now, instead of feeling like data, it felt like a dare. I watched the door open and close, and I couldn't tell if it was real or if my brain was clinging to the pattern like an addict craving a fix. At 3:13 a.m., the door opened, and this time, something stepped out. It was only on camera for 2 seconds, a figure low to the ground, half hidden by the angle. The footage stuttered, pixelated, like the camera itself didn't want to capture it. Then it moved back inside, and the door closed. My hands were shaking. I replayed it, frame by frame. The figure's outline was wrong, like it was too close to the floor, like it had too many points of contact. I grabbed the radio and called for a patrol unit, voice sharp. Unit 12, I need you in corridor C9, now. The patrol officer sounded annoyed. Marcus, that corridor's empty, he said. Go anyway, I snapped. Now. I watched him on camera as he approached C9, flashlight in hand. He paused at the door, tested the handle. Locked. He turned his flashlight beam down the corridor. Nothing. He radioed back. Doors locked, he said. No movement. No one here. I stared at the screen, my mouth dry. Stay there, I said. Just stay for a minute. The officer sighed, but he stayed, leaning against the wall. 8 minutes passed. The door opened behind him. Slowly. The officer didn't hear it. The corridor audio feed was weak, and his radio crackled with static. But on camera, I watched the door swing open, and a dark shape spill out like liquid shadow. It rose, not standing, but unfolding, climbing up the air behind him. My breath caught in my throat. Turn around, I whispered, though he couldn't hear me. The officer scratched his neck, bored, oblivious. The shape reached toward him. Then, in one smooth motion, it slid back into the room, and the door closed. The officer remained untouched. I sat there shaking, my brain trying to reconcile what I'd seen. The door opened for 20 seconds. The shape appeared. It retreated, like it was practicing, like it was learning the schedule. I called Elena the next day, outside of protocol, on the number she'd given me for urgent concerns. She answered on the third ring. "Marcus?" she said, a voice cautious. "I'm not on the drug anymore," I said quickly. "The pattern's still there. Corridor C9, it's still opening. I saw something. It's real." There was a silence on the line that felt heavy, like she was deciding what to admit. "Your records indicate successful completion," she said finally, voice careful and distant. "That's what you keep saying," I snapped. "I'm telling you something's wrong." "Sometimes, after heightened vigilance," she began. "No," I cut in. "Don't do that. Don't tell me it's my brain. The door is opening. The schedule is real. I saw it behind a patrol officer." Elena didn't answer for a long moment. Then she said softly, "Did it touch him?" "What?" I asked. "Did it touch him?" she repeated, and now her voice sounded like she was reading from something. "No," I said. "It didn't." Another pause. "Then it's not finished," she whispered. My stomach turned. "What does that mean?" Elena exhaled, and her composure cracked just slightly. "BNP4 wasn't just about threat detection," she said. "It increased your sensitivity to environmental patterns. It revealed things most people filter out." I gripped the phone harder. "Like what?" Elena's voice dropped. "Like routines that aren't human," she said. "Like systems that run under the city that weren't built for us." The line went quiet for a second, like she'd realized she'd said too much. Then she added, quickly, "Marcus, you need to stop watching Corridor C9." I laughed, a harsh sound. "That's your advice? Stop looking?" "Yes," she said firmly. "Stop looking. Stop engaging the pattern. Let it fade." "It's not fading," I said. "It's getting clearer." Elena swallowed, and I could hear it over the phone, an awful human sound. "Then you need to understand something," she said. "Your brain still detects threats, but it can't tell what's you and what's not. That's what happens when baseline doesn't return." My mouth went dry. "I'm not making this up," I said. "I know," Elena whispered. She hung up. That night, I went back to my station at Harlow Intermodal and tried to do my job without looking at Corridor C9. I lasted an hour. The pull was magnetic. My eyes drifted to that camera feed like it was the only thing on the wall. The door opened, closed, opened, closed, every 8 minutes. I started counting without meaning to. By 2:43 a.m., I was leaning forward, face close to the monitor, my body tense like I was waiting for a jump scare in a movie I couldn't pause. The door opened. The shadow slid out, low and fast, hugging the floor. This time it didn't retreat. It moved down the corridor, directly toward the camera. My breath stopped. The camera feed stuttered as the shape approached. Pixels warped. The image bent like heat distortion. The shape rose, slowly, unfolding upward, as if it was learning how tall it was allowed to be. Then, in the flickering light, I realized what made it wrong. It moved like it had watched people move, not like it had ever been one. It leaned toward the camera, and for one sick moment, I felt like it was leaning toward me through the screen. The feed cut to black. Not static, not interference, just black. All the other cameras stayed live. Only C9 went dark. My hands flew over the keyboard, trying to refresh the feed, trying to pull up the last recorded footage. Nothing. The system log showed a blank gap where the feed should have been. My heart hammered. Then the radio crackled. "Marcus," the patrol officer's voice said, low and tense. "You seeing this?" My throat tightened. "Seeing what?" I asked, voice thin. Silence then. "The door," the officer whispered. "It's open." I stared at the black screen, cold sweat sliding down my spine. "You're in C9?" I asked. "No," the officer said. "I'm nowhere near it. I'm on the main platform." My stomach dropped. "Then how do you know?" The officer didn't answer for a second. Then he said, voice shaking, "Because I can see inside it from here." My blood went cold. C9 wasn't visible from the main platform. It was buried in the service corridors. That door shouldn't be in his line of sight. "What do you mean you can see inside it?" I demanded. The officer's breathing came fast over the radio. "It's like the hallway's wrong," he whispered. "Like there's a cut in the air, like someone opened a door where there shouldn't be one." I stared at the dead camera feed, my mind racing, the old BNP 4 clarity gone, replaced by raw dread and one screaming thought. The pattern wasn't confined to the corridor. It was expanding. "Marcus," the officer said, voice cracking. "There's someone standing in it." My hands trembled. "Describe them," I said. The officer swallowed hard. "It's not someone," he whispered. "It's shaped like someone." My stomach turned. My mouth tasted like metal. "Does it look at you?" I asked. The officer's voice dropped to a breath. "It's looking through me," he said. The radio went quiet. I sat frozen, staring at the black square where corridor C9 used to be, feeling something shift inside my own head. Not a thought, a sensation, like the pattern was no longer out there in the terminal, like it had found a route into me. And for the first time since the study ended, I understood the real horror of it. My mind still detected threats, but it couldn't tell which patterns were real and which ones were mine. Because the pattern wasn't just in the corridors. It was in my routines, in my attention, in the way my eyes kept returning to that missing feed, in the way my brain, even without the drug, kept counting 8 minutes. Open, close, like a heartbeat, like a schedule, like something that had always been there, waiting for someone to notice. And now that I had, it didn't have to stay hidden anymore. You have reached the end of tonight's trial, the final moment of observation, before the system returns to being what it has always been: quiet, integrated, assumed, waiting without urgency or explanation. If any part of these stories stayed with you, if you felt something tighten when the improvement arrived too cleanly, too efficiently, or without resistance, if you noticed how often the danger was not the enhancement itself, but the moment it ended, or the moment it didn't, do not let the evaluation stop here. Subscribe to continue examining systems people volunteer for, protocols designed to restore clarity, reduce fatigue, optimize perception, and correct what feels inefficient, where the threat does not announce itself, it stabilizes performance, and where the most unsettling realization is understanding that baseline is not something you return to, but something that can quietly move without you noticing. Tell me in the comments which trial stayed with you the longest, which improvement felt too smooth, which baseline never fully came back, the clarity you still remember, the pattern you could not unsee, or the moment you realized your mind was still working, just no longer in the same way. Like the video so these stories reach others who are considering participation, who are chasing focus, relief, or control, and who believe the risk is always dramatic, visible, or immediate, and not the quieter cost of perception that no longer knows where normal ends. And if you have your own experience, a study that promised support and delivered permanence, a trial that ended cleanly but left something behind, a system that recalibrated you instead of restoring you, or a version of yourself you still remember too clearly, you are always welcome to share it. Send your experience to the business email in the channel bio, and it may become part of a future Entity Shadows episode. Thank you for listening, for staying attentive, for questioning improvement, for noticing the difference between thinking better and thinking differently, and for remembering that some systems do not fail. They persist. And until next time, pay attention to what improves you. Notice what no longer struggles. And if your mind begins to feel quieter, faster, or more precise without knowing why, do not assume the process has ended. Because sometimes, the most dangerous enhancements are not the ones that change you immediately, but the ones that continue working after you believe you have returned to normal. And remember, the dark awaits.